The bell above the diner door jingled, slicing through the late morning lull like a warning bell. Two uniformed police officers stepped inside, boots thudding against the checkered tile floor. At the far corner of the room, a black man sat alone, hunched over a half-empty cup of coffee. His clothes were tattered, his face roughened by time and hardship. But beneath the sleeve of his worn jacket, a faint line of an American flag tattoo still showed the kind worn only by those who earned it in blood. The younger officer nudged his partner with a smirk. "Looks like we've got ourselves a squatter," he said, fingers idly tapping the holster at his side. No one in the diner said a word. A few customers lowered their eyes. The man didn't flinch. He simply took a breath, lifted his phone, and dialed. His voice was calm but unmistakably clear. "You're making a mistake." His name was Nathaniel Briggs. Once he had been the shadow that haunted insurgents in Afghanistan. 2 tours in combat and nearly a decade in covert operations for agencies whose names never made it to paper. But war changes shape. When Nate came home, the system he'd served so fiercely didn't serve him back. Without family, without housing, and trapped in bureaucratic red tape, Nate found himself homeless in the same country he had risked his life to protect. Nights spent in alleyways, meals scavenged or gifted by kind-hearted strangers, that was his reality now. But beneath that weathered exterior still lived a soldier and a man with powerful allies. "You got ID, sir?" the taller cop asked, his voice thick with sarcasm. Nate didn't bother answering. "Just finishing my coffee, officers." "We got complaints," the cop replied. "Homeless guy causing trouble." Without waiting, he clamped a hand down on Nate's shoulder. "Time to go." Nate's jaw clenched. His fingers gripped the table's edge steady. "Last chance," he warned, nudging his phone across the table. "Walk away." They laughed. "Or what? You'll call your street buddies." Nate pressed send. On the other end of the line, a voice answered instantly. "Briggs, you alive? I need a favor." "General," Nate replied without breaking eye contact with the officers. At that moment, the television in the corner flickered to breaking news. Pentagon launches internal probe into police misconduct. Reports cite unauthorized surveillance of high-clearance veterans. The police radios crackled wildly. "All units stand down on Briggs. I repeat, stand down immediately." One officer reached for his cuffs anyway, red-faced and furious. "You think one call changes anything?" Nate leaned in, voice steady as steel. "That call was a courtesy," he whispered. "The next one writes your obituary." Outside, sirens wailed. Not from local patrol cars, but from unmarked black SUVs now screeching to a halt. The door flew open. Several federal agents in suits entered swiftly, their badges flashing. "Officers," the lead agent announced, "you are relieved of duty, effective immediately." As the shocked diners looked on the handcuffs once intended for Nate now clicked around the wrists of the two police officers. Nate stepped into the sunlight, and took a long breath of freedom. A voice crackled in his earpiece. "You coming home, soldier?" asked General Harrington, the man on the other end of the call. Nate looked at his tattoo, the faded flag on his bicep, and the crowd gathering around the diner. "Not yet, sir," he said. "Still work to do." The agents arrived the moment the officers were escorted out, and the silent, composed walk of Nate Briggs as he left behind chaos and disbelief. Major networks picked it up. Veterans groups demanded accountability. Civil rights organizations called for reforms. But Nate didn't stick around for interviews. He didn't want fame. He wanted change. For Nate, justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reminding people that behind every weathered face on the street, there could be a story, a sacrifice that this country owes more than pity. What happened in that diner wasn't just a confrontation between a homeless man and two arrogant officers. It was a collision between assumption and truth, between power and principle. And Nate had reminded them with a single phone call that respect isn't granted by a badge. It's earned. For Nate, justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reminding people that behind every weathered face on the street, there could be a story, a sacrifice that this country owes more than pity. What happened in that diner wasn't just a confrontation between a homeless man and two arrogant officers. It was a collision between assumption and truth, between power and principle. And Nate had reminded them with a single phone call that respect isn't granted by a badge. It's earned. Nate Briggs disappeared again as quietly as he had entered. Some said they saw him months later helping a vet into a clinic. Others said he was in D.C. speaking quietly to senators behind closed doors. But no one could say for sure. He was a ghost, a symbol, a living reminder that real power doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It just calls, and everything changes.